Thank you everybody to join the ViveCon 2021 session on design and visualization. We hope you enjoyed all the announcements, and this is a time now for us together to discuss more in details about how you take advantage of all this for design and visualization. We have all seen many use cases of visualization. We can see growing use case both from architecture visualization to car configurator in point of sales, or teams in car manufacturer doing the complete design review actually with only a virtual prototype. Visualization is actually growing every year, and there is a strong improvement into the number of applications and the quality with which you can do visualization in VR. One of the main driver is actually the benefit that it brings. And as one of our ASV partner, Dassault System is mentioning, just to be in an immersive, in a VR environment with your design completely changes the way that you perceive your design. And this is irreplaceable. This is just seeing real size what you will design, and that benefits really is found across many of the professions. Now, what's driving that growth? What's driving the acceleration is that VR at the beginning was used just for volume visualization, just to get really a feel of what you're designing at life size, and to be able to move around to really see it as if it was real. But it was just volume size. You couldn't really see it in a photorealistic way, really as it would be. And the big change is now that we're moving into the possibility to have in VR a physically accurate immersive situation of a really a photorealistic view about that environment that you are going to build. Now, this is made possible because there are several things happening at the same time. It's not one piece of the technology. It is actually a combination of the fast progress of professional data workflow, because in the past you could only use VR with just one application, so you would visualize that application, but usually for your workflow, you need quite a number of applications one after the other. The second point is really that in addition, the power of rendering, both by hardware power and with new software technique, the possibility of rendering becomes a lot more sophisticated and brings photorealistic view in VR. And the third, of course, is that you need a new generation of headset to be able to take advantage of that, and that's what HTC announced yesterday. Now, going into more details about that, I think many of us have seen that you could visualize VR from a single application, whether it was for architecture design or for CAD design or for prototype, the virtual prototype review, but it was just one application. It's quite difficult to be able to use VR at that time for your complete workflow. Now, we saw a big evolution in a number of years. Or in 2019 already, Katia as a single app was providing the complete integration, so you could actually design your new parts or engine and directly view in VR what you were designing. But that was limited to staying within Katia. And then we saw in the 2019-20, we saw both Unity Reflect and Unreal Datasmith coming up with a possibility to optimize your workflow for the AEC industry. So it's vertical specific. Now, what's coming up, and probably some of you saw the announcement of NVIDIA about what they call Omniverse, is a possibility now to have two-way communication between multiple applications, so that whatever you design and you change on your designing software, you can see it real time in 3D lifelike. And that is obviously going to open VR visualization into a lot more areas. At the same time, we have all seen that, of course, the power of GPUs is increasing rapidly. And in addition to the power, new software techniques coming, whether it's the forwarded rendering, like what you could see here with the example of Autodesk VRED, using with the forwarded rendering with the VIVE Pro Eye, where you basically can focus all the power you have in the center where you're looking at, and you reduce the resolution in the periphery where the eye is less sensitive to that. Or also new technique, the so-called upscaling, where you actually, although you render in the lower resolution, with that new technique, you can actually display in a higher resolution than what you have rendered. So this is really fundamental and will really help to drive a lot more photorealistic VR. Now, in addition to that, of course, cloud rendering is coming. And the cloud rendering brings the advantage to be able to have both the advantage of the power plus those new software techniques, but in the cloud, as to say, so that you don't need to carry that power of computing with you. You don't need to have a PC, and you can stream that rendered images directly from the cloud. Now, with all this, that has brought the possibility to render photorealistic and accurate simulation of reality. You obviously need to have better VR headset, better in a sense of being able to provide a higher resolution and more natural view, so that it feels more real. And that's just what we've announced yesterday with both PCVR product, the VIVE Pro 2, and the standalone, the VIVE Focus 3. Both have a 5K resolution. Both have 120-degree field of view and a new display type that brings real RGB. That means a lot more natural colors. And we all know that for architects, for example, the possibility to be able to simulate accurate color is really very important in their work. It also comes with the possibility of high refresh rate, but also with different use cases. Like, while the VIVE Pro is the optimum for visualization and needs a PC, the VIVE Focus 3 will be able to work both as a standalone product and as a PC connected product, basically streaming the VR over USB-C. While the VIVE Pro 2 will be able to support also multi-user in the same space for product review, for example, or building walkthrough review with your customers, and also external object tracking. The VIVE Focus 3 is very portable and focused on visualization as a main use cases. Now, over those years, we've been working with many software platforms in order to be able to leverage on VR. And while many of us are more familiar with 3D engine like Unreal and Unity, in the complete professional workflow, specific industry platforms are very important as well. So they really complement each other. And as you can see, VIVE Pro now supports most of the industry platforms in architecture, in CAD, in design, in virtual prototyping, and even also in factory simulations. Now, beyond that, new use cases need new companies to develop software, need startups, basically. And this is where VIVE ISV has been focusing a lot of strengths in order to be able to help new use cases to develop. And I'm very happy that you've joined this panel, and we will be able to discuss with 4 of our main partners now.
Okay, great. Hello and welcome to ViveCon. My name's Dave Haynes from HTC VIVE, and I want to welcome you all to this excellent panel that we have lined up today around design and visualization. And for those of you who know this area, it's one that VIVE has really been working on, since the launch of the first VIVE. But with the announcement of the new headsets, the greater visual fidelity, etc., we think that design and visualization is a really important category, one that we know a lot of our customers are using, but also importantly, one where we have a lot of great ISVs and other partners who are building great solutions. So this panel, we're going to cover the whole topic. We have a broad range of speakers from Adobe, Masterpiece, Tavori, and Effectatage. And I'm going to ask them just to talk a bit more about their companies, some of the things that they're seeing in this area, and then looking a little bit towards the future and some of the new use cases that we think will be unlocked with the new hardware. So let's dive in. I'm going to ask each of our panelists just to introduce themselves and a bit more about what they do and what their companies do. So Pierre, why don't you kick us off?
All right. So Pierre Mero on my head. I'm head of strategic initiatives and partnerships at Adobe 3D and Immersive, including a Substance portfolio of products. Before joining Adobe, I was for 8 years at Dassault Systèmes on CATIA, so I have also a little bit of background on CAD design, and also originally I was coming from automotive design, so I'm fairly familiar with those workflow. And being at Adobe right now, we are leveraging the Substance portfolio ecosystem, Painter, Designer, Alchemist, and also existing solutions such as Adobe Dimension and Adobe Aero. And that's globally it.
Brilliant, excellent. Thanks, Pierre. And Jonathan, tell us more about yourself and Masterpiece.
Hey everyone, I'm John Gagne, CEO of Masterpiece Studio. Just last week, we announced something pretty exciting. It's Masterpiece Studio Pro. And this is a huge evolution of what we've had previously. This is the first fully immersive app that can do the entire 3D creation pipeline for an asset. But the key thing there is that, this sort of unlocks some of the potential for creating in VR. VR speeds things up, but there's often been missing steps. This allows you to fill in those steps to be able to create content that's production ready, that can be put right into a game or animation. And what's great about it, though, is that you don't need to just use us. There's a lot of other great apps. Like, we've got some right here. Tavori is a great app. Adobe Medium, a great app. You can use these apps, bring it into our software, and then complete the pipeline. So I'm pretty excited to be just releasing that and to continue to work with partners.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. Inga, please tell us about Tavori.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here at this panel today. I'm Inga, CEO of Tavori. So to make it simple, Tavori is design and prototyping platform to build truly immersive apps and games. And here by immersive or spatial, we mean more than just VR or AR products. It's also about anything where we have a user interacting with 3D objects around. So basically also real world surroundings, environments, and products. So we are moving from animation platform for building 3D animations to a larger scale of visualizing and designing anything that where it's important to feel the scale and depth, and we democratize, I would say this way, and make it super accessible to visualize your 3D ideas in VR, but for any type of outcome.
Brilliant, great. Thanks, Inga. That's really clear. So Robert, maybe you could make an introduction as well.
Sure. Thanks for having us, by the way. Hello, my name is Robert Hunecker. I work as a senior digital consultant for Effectatage, a Berlin-based digital agency. We are specialized in providing high-quality visualization services as well as digital brand and product experience. Our clients include well-known car manufacturers such as Lamborghini, Audi, BMW, Mini, and Volkswagen, as well as fashion brands such as Adidas and Hugo Boss. We also work in the context of virtual production, handling real-time implementation of large-scale entertainment mega projects as well as real estate construction projects. Yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's great and awesome. I think, yeah, areas like digital fashion and virtual production are, yeah, extremely interesting at the moment. So would love to dive into that a bit more later. Great. So I'm going to come to our first question. What I wanted to ask each of you actually in turn is just if you can, the design world is, really broad, a lot of different users, a lot of different end customers. That could be somebody from the fashion industry. It could be somebody designing a car, but it could also be, a student designing an animation or, learning their first kind of design skills before they move on to something like CAD. Maybe, starting with you, Pierre, if you can talk about Adobe Substance and, what is a typical end user in VR and how are they using your product?
So there is a very wide range of users. Originally, we are coming from the game industry and the VFX industry, but things that are more dedicated to manufacturing, it can be from car designers to architects. Immersivity and VR is very key for architects when you want to decide about the lighting and the experience of a building. VR is probably the best media to experience it. And then you were mentioning it, but the growth into footwear and fashion is huge these days. So it's really something that is speeding up recently. So I definitely would like to mention it.
Yeah, cool. And Jonathan, you mentioned at the top there that, with Masterpiece Studio, you have a lot of new features. How have you seen your user base kind of evolve? Like what was the type of user when they were using you in 2017 and 2018, and where are you seeing that today in 2021?
Yeah, great question. So it's essentially been moving up the chain in terms of quality and professionalism and the caliber of the user. So we started out, late 2016, 2017, very much consumer, moved up to prosumer next year. Then we started using, small professionals like freelancers, studios, and originally they were using it for things like, 3D concept art, for example, or rapid prototyping, previs, things like that. And now we've started to expand further. We have people at like Pixar and other major studios that are literally saying it's speeding up their workflow by 10x. We have people that just with this new update where we've added the ability to clean up the meshes, texture painting, blend shapes, and a whole bunch of stuff to all of our existing tools that make it really easy. And now they're not only using it for previs, but they're actually taking that object and starting to put it into production as well. So we finally, I think, made that jump where VR can now be, used not just in the previs, but actual iterative production work.
Yeah, makes sense. And Inga, for Tvori, actually a ViveX backed company, so we've known the product for a long time. You have, you started off more in the animation space, but now also have a new product catering to more this prototyping use case. So what were your insights? What led you to kind of, not pivot, but kind of, add on to the functionality of what Tvori could actually do? Was that something that you planned, or was it just a case of talking to customers and finding out how they were using the platform?
Yeah, so that's my favorite question, probably. So you're right. So when we started Tvori back in 2016, we've been thinking what would be the unique selling point behind Tvori, and we realized that we want to go beyond static. So we really want to enable people to tell stories. And that's still true. So people use Tvori on PC, and designers or animators, they really want to tell the story, whether it ends up with animatic or previs, or like designers from the Department of Future of Design, they want to tell stories to their budget owners and stakeholders of how this car will be interacting and this future of mobility will look like. And mobility is much easier to explain if the doors of the car are opening and the car is moving and users are interacting with that. But then we were looking at the market and our user base, and we realized that we have more and more designers who are UI, UX designers and 3D designers, 2D designers exploring and playing with Tvori. And later on, those were industrial designers and interaction designers. And then we started, let's say, that pain and problem. So why are they jumping into VR and why are they discovering? And it's actually a very interesting reason for them. So it's definitely an immediate value for people who are designing VR and AR, because it's super important to start being immersed and get the right scale and depth and ergonomics of environment. But even for non-XR outcome for industrial designers and interaction designers, it's still super important to iterate fast, right? Because it's surprising, but today the process of product development is not always that agile, and 2D designers are limited with their tools. 3D is still super challenging, and in XR, for example, you can't really test your stuff until you finish your job in the real-time engine like Unity to really check the build on the final device. So with Tvori, we enable people to test ideas as early as possible, to have really iterative process. And that's why that transition to design and prototyping and also test your ideas on the final device as early as possible is super important. And we get like that kind of immediate feedback, and it's also collaborative because that's the demand of the designer. So to start ideation process, low fidelity design, and then enhance and brainstorm on top of that and come to quite high fidelity with prototyping interactions, and then already export that to final implementation in the real-time engine. So we still kind of go both directions. We still have customers from animation and entertainment industry who are doing previses, but probably it will take more time for them to fully adopt VR in their backflows. And with design and prototyping, it's like immediate value, and we get traction today, which is super important for us being a startup. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. And Robert, on your side, I mean, you have some, very high-end customers. I can imagine, very demanding customers like Lamborghini. What's been the journey like getting them into kind of VR and starting to kind of adopt some of their workflows to this new world that's possible now?
Yeah, that's a fun story. So all of those clients we have, especially from the automotive industry and fashion brands, they did like 10 years back, they did renderings, traditional renderings. That's what they did. And that's where they also stopped. And a couple of years back, there was an interesting development where this whole game industry kind of like it mixes with video and film production for years now. But now it kind of like mixes also with those industries, which enables us to provide those clients with new ways to do marketing for their products or to create content. But also, of course, also during production, iterate quite quickly through different versions they would like to test out before making them. This is the way we're currently going with those clients. I have a game dev background myself, so I was quite happy that this is the development we see, and I can now work with those clients.
Yeah, makes sense. And Jonathan, when it comes to your side of things, we've seen a lot of people adopt these new VR workflows, but there's still a lot that's kind of evolving there. People have habits built up from the way they used to do things. They have to get used to these new technologies. How mature does this feel now? Have we seen that customer workflows have matured to adopt VR into that?
Well, I'm going to sort of re-answer the question from a different perspective.
Great.
What we're doing is we're not targeting the people who've been doing it this way forever. Yes, there's some technical artists that were 3D modelers and they just like it this way because it's so much faster. But our market isn't that 1% who can create 3D content today. It's the 99%. It's over 152 million creative class professionals who can't, but who have an incentive to do so. Now, it takes time for them to realize that they can do this, and they're amazed that they can. And I can't say that it's matured in the sense that the whole industry, it's a standard de facto yet, because it's not. But what it is the first people who are jumping in, who are trying it, are now starting to be blown away, being like, hey, I can actually make content. So we're starting to see the beginning of a tsunami. We can see it off in the distance, and it's growing from individuals, and those individuals you'll see over the next coming couple of years start to spread it throughout their organization.
Yeah, makes sense. And Pierre, with Substance, that's a product that's been designed to kind of work in the workflow of like many different tools. So how are you seeing that pan out? What is your strategy to kind of go across different applications, and where does kind of interoperability play a role as you go in between different various platforms?
So that's indeed very key. When you do texture in Substance Painter, afterwards you can go to 3ds Max and V-Ray to do offline rendering and super high-end 2D images, as we've been doing it for years. And in the same time, based on the same model, going to Unreal, Unity, V-Red for the automotive, Autodesk software. So being able to move your 3D asset depending on your purpose to different software or even platform is very key. And same thing for VR being one means among others. You have AR, you have VR, you have desktop, you have mobile, and we just see it as extending the world we have around us.
Yeah, and it seems like with initiatives like NVIDIA's Omniverse, there is this drive to that kind of real-time collaboration across these things as well. So somebody can be designing in VR, like looking at the outcome in on a 2D desktop, but then visualizing that in a space with augmented reality. Yeah, so I'll throw this question open, but how do you guys see what you're doing, whether it's Masterpiece, Tvori, or Effectatage? Like, how do you is that a vision that you share? Do you think these things will go cross-platform and become much easier to use with each other?
I think it's going to make a huge impact. I remember having this conversation at the beginning of 2017 with a whole bunch of design startups, actually, about saying, hey, there's this missing piece. Why don't we start building this? Well, as startups, we only have so many resources, so we weren't actually able to make it in full. But then, NVIDIA started to make this this holographic program where you can go in and see the models, and that evolved to Omniverse. And so we were excited about that. About 2 years ago, we got one of the first alphas of that. It was in really early stages, but put it on hold. Now we're working again with NVIDIA to integrate with that, connecting all the programs. I think that we're moving into a world where everything connects to everything. And the traditional way of doing it, where you have to send around these big files, that's just an antiquated way of doing it. So absolutely, I think it's going to be the direction that's headed.
Yeah.
I fully agree here in terms that there should be some transition hub or connection hub for us to really transmit data and really have very effective workflows to really help people to be productive. Yeah, we collaborate with NVIDIA. I can't say that this is something that is materializing this year or beginning probably even of next year. It's still, we don't see that demand right now, immediate. But definitely this is the future. This is how the things should work out.
And so I want to talk about hardware in a minute, but before we jump into that, if you think about all the different things, all the things that are changing, or whether it's in the market or with the technology, like what do you think have been the key drivers in the last few months and kind of into 2021 that will drive customer adoption? Because we're seeing a lot of it in a pretty fast pace, but what's actually driving that at the moment? And again, that's an open question. Pierre, maybe we could start with you.
I think definitely something that was missing, corresponding to our specific topic around, for instance, digital materials, is having the feeling, not the haptic feedback, but more like having a realism and a resolution that is good enough so that you can touch the material with the eye and have we just released a fully procedural leather library on Substance Source recently, and also this variation between ostrich and crocodile skin, etc. You need to go closer. Like when you go into a shop, you want to go closer. And in VR, back in the day, you were like, you do it, and then you understand it doesn't work, so you keep your distance, and it's not making sense. Like, you really want to move as immersively as possible, as Inga was mentioning. So I think, yeah, realism and resolution is something that you want to see through the regular eyes you have every day.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, and hopefully, VIVE's helping there with the Pro 2. I think that one of the goals there is really to bring high resolution, but an affordable price, so that that's at reach for many different customers. But Robert, I mean, I can imagine that's especially important for you guys. I can imagine customers before these higher resolution displays and headsets came along. If you're a brand and you're in fashion or you're in virtual production, like, do you think this has unlocked new use cases and new business for you because of this higher fidelity resolution?
Oh, definitely. We're looking so much forward to work with the Pro 2. The problem is the expectations of our clients are high, especially in the areas of fast fashion and autonomous driving. It is becoming increasingly important not only to be able to present products virtually, but also to render materiality and space tangible and authentic. From a design perspective, we were naturally confronted with having to make adjustments on many projects that represent a compromise to the client's initial vision. For example, to make elements more readable due to resolution limitations. We often have to adjust or simplify materials as well. This also happens with shaders and geometry information, which also helps us to improve performance, of course. In games, this is naturally part of the process. For our clients, such as fashion brands or the automotive industry, this is something they have often to cope with in a way. We then offer in-house solutions that we use to try to solve most of those issues, or at least offer alternatives instead. Of course, we are also building on tools that provide us with the freedom we need. One of these, for sure, is Adobe Substance Ecosystem. That's definitely something we use to get around those obstacles. Our clients come first, but they have to keep their customers in mind, and so do we, of course. For their customers, they wish them to be able to experience a product in a lifelike and almost tangible way. Everything that distracts from that level of immersion is something we very much worry about. For that matter, wearing comfort is very important. Customers are also great in spotting things developers have already learned to accept or to not look at anymore. They wish for more peripheral vision, for example, to be further immersed into the scene they are currently visiting. Though the field of view, for example, with HMDs, provided a lot during the last couple of years, we still have some way to go, I think. This also raises the subject we are all so much familiar with, motion sickness and pixel velocity. What's going on there? It improved a lot during the last couple of years. But also, there's still some way to go, and higher resolution, higher frame rates, less flickering, all those things, I believe, will help a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting observation because, a lot of us on this panel, we spend, we've been in and out of headsets, since 2014, 2015. Like you said, we've kind of created affordances for the things that we know will be improved in the future. But if you're, and again, there's a difference between consumer VR and enterprise VR. If you're designing a headset for a consumer in their living room, there's a different set of trade-offs than if you're designing that for somebody who's working at in a design function in a high-end fashion brand. And I guess just little details that people won't pick up on, but things like color. We had a lot of feedback when designing the Pro 2 around, for actually some use cases, those details do matter. Does that match your experience, Rob?
I think that even before we go to the resolution, and that's super important, of course. And I mean, in our case, actually, there is one step before. Actually, we still see lots of XR teams in Fortune 500 companies, really huge companies, also automobile companies, when the XR team of 20 people still has one to two headset. And it's totally developers driven who are doing everything in Unity, and they put a headset at the end to check, let's say, what they get. So in order to really spread this and make it like mass adoption, at least at enterprises, that every XR member or any industrial designer has a headset, it still has to be comfort, cost, and content. And comfort is important for us, and because I mean we are for productivity app, and we assume that people can spend hours in a headset, and the session is not as limited as today's session with any standalone headset. I mean, it's totally fine to spend 7-8 hours in VIVE Pro. I can do that, and VIVE Pro I too probably will be also like all day long session, but standalone headsets that are available today are super limiting the session duration, and our numbers are really scary, and we have to redesign and rethink our product in some sense to allow people to complete their mission in VR within 1 hour instead of 6 hours. And we do have an analytic that people can spend in tethered PC today up to 5-6 hours easily. And content is something that we control. So the more professionals and creative people join the space, the better kind of inspirational content we get, right? Right now, again, I mean, the whole XR is driven by developers, and we've done almost 50 interviews beginning of the year with all the major companies you can think about, and mostly XR teams have a couple of designers who are doing some 2D stuff at the beginning of the process. And then they have Unity developers, and everyone, product owner, design chief, chief of product, everyone relies on Unity developer who finally in 1 month give the build to test it. And the cost of change is super high. And I think that resolution and field of view is super important. But probably before that, to really make this kind of happen, the ergonomics of a headset, of course, the comfort to wear it, and probably it should be standalone for some cases is super important.
Yeah, and so Inga, you're targeting. So Tvori was PCVR based. Now you have a product that's also designed for standalone devices like Focus 3, right?
Absolutely. So we still have Tvori PC, and this is a very sophisticated piece of software for 3D artists and animators, or anyone who can like do really intensive stuff, bring anything in, and expert in a variety of formats. So Tvori for standalone and for Focus 3 is a revised product. It's born for designers. So it has also different UI and UX, and it allows you to also product owners, and because as Jonathan said with Masterpiece, so any creative, they are targeting 99% of people who can't do 3D today. So, and same here. So there are designers, but there are also project managers and product owners and pre-sales and sales who want to kind of influence. And in Tvori, it's on standalone, it's collaborative. So you start co-create and ideate together like quickly. It's all about rapid prototyping. But our heart is motion and show everything in function. And that's why it will be, but also designers don't want to put too much effort into animating stuff. So that will be accessible interactivity, and we are still kind of researching that.
Awesome. And Jonathan, I guess you're kind of taking a hybrid approach, right? So there seems to be this split. On the one hand, standalone brings a lot more convenience, and it's more portable, and you don't need to have a PC nearby and all those things. But for some use cases, you will still need the horsepower of the the GPU and the PC that you have in the office. But maybe you can explain your strategy. Like, how are you kind of balancing that trade-off between PC and standalone, Jonathan?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, first of all, the amount of processing that's done in our software, we've had to optimize it crazy just to get it to work on a PC at the frame rates in VR. And it is just technically impossible to get this to work on a standalone in and of itself with today's technology. I mean, maybe in a couple of years it'll be different. So we have a different approach. Right? Our main piece is the PCVR. But what we're doing is we're leaning into the future with streaming, right? So we have successfully gotten Cloud XR streaming to the Focus 3. In a couple of weeks, we will have the proof of concept of that working in over 5G as well. And we're also working with NVIDIA to have them running off the cloud infrastructure, which we haven't verified the latency ourselves, but from what we hear, it's about 50 milliseconds. Could be a little better, but that's still workable. That's still decent. So, thinking that in a short period of time, getting 50 milliseconds streaming to your headset, low cost headset that can have high quality rendering within the next few years, I think that's really a powerful step forward. And, to sort of wrap that all up, just briefly to I think validate what Inga said, there's 10,000 things that could make all of this just explode, but it comes down to two fundamental things: hardware being in people's hands and mature software. I think we're getting there with the hardware. We see some really great stuff with the two new headsets being released by VIVE, and software. It's been taking so long, but we're finally at the point where the software is not just about, oh wow, this is amazing and I don't use it forever. It's wow, I can actually do my work and it's better than anything else that I could have done before.
Yeah, makes total sense. Great. Well, thanks for that. I want to zoom out a little bit and come back to Pierre, because we've talked a lot about adoption. There's what we're doing here is super innovative, really exciting use cases. There's still a lot of people who design but haven't necessarily dipped their toes into this space. But for someone like Adobe, why is 3D, VR, AR, and kind of immersive technologies, it's good to see Adobe really kind of proactively working towards that. Are these technologies an important piece of your strategy going forward at a high level?
Yeah, so as mentioned, the division on its own is called 3D and immersive, because you could imagine that you include immersivity into 3D, but we really wanted to highlight that it's something that is very specific. What immersivity is bringing is like having the scale one interaction, and like everything is more intuitive. And to Jonathan's point, I think that's how we will get people that are not into 3D there, because you will do it as you are doing it in the real life. And that's also why we made the acquisition of Medium, that I've been exchanging with many users that are physical sculptors, and were able to jump into 3D with Medium, because they were able to have the same interaction with their virtual clay as they are doing it in the real life. And that's pretty mind-blowing. One of our artists called Giovanni Nagkiel, you can follow what he's doing on Instagram. And on Instagram, sometimes you have physical sculpting and sometimes you have virtual sculpting, and at some point you can't tell anymore. So really, I think VR is very key for that. And the long-term vision is what I was mentioning earlier on, is having the boundary being more and more blurry. You're starting to sketch on your iPad, and then you go to your desktop, and then you want to be more immersed, and you have a VR headset, and then you want to have it overlay with existing background like architecture scenario, and then you are in AR. And so this transition between those different medias has to be as smooth as possible. And that's what we are working on, definitely.
Yeah, makes sense. And I'd love to get everybody's view on this. Obviously, when you're convincing a large organization to adopt some of these solutions, there will be the designers champing at the bit to try it out, but then there'll be someone in the background asking, okay, well, does that speed things up or cut costs or make things more efficient? Does anyone have any good kind of use cases or data points that prove the effectiveness of some of these technologies? And where do you see like kind of customers actually making the most ROI if you look at this as a space as a whole?
I mean, I can just repeat the use case more or less mentioned. So it's all about, we finally learned how to wrap up those use cases and how to kind of sell them to companies and how to explain, because I mean, decision makers, they have to think about the gain they get. I mean, speed is good, but then overall efficiency, what we are saving on. And what really works well in our kind of scenario is that decision makers or product owners, or some companies call those chief of design, they get full control of the process, because they themselves, without probably any real-time engine, they can jump into the tool and they can explain the initial setup. So it's kind of start this ideation. And then before they start spending any dollar on coding, and we all know that developers are more expensive and then probably 2D designers, for example, but it's also time, in terms of time. So how many hours you need to program something in real-time engine. Before they do that, they already can test the ideas in VR, because they have interactive prototype, and all together they check the UX. Okay, does this user flow right? So is this user behavior natural enough? So they really save lots of time on because once it's implemented, and we've heard that a lot from designers. So we are doing design in Unity, but honestly, it's basically means implementation. It's not about design anymore, but they use it because they still have to do that in 3D, and they see all the limitations. So 2D tools are super accessible and super easy to use, and there are lots of 2D design tools out there. But then transition from 2D to 3D is kind of weird and takes time. 3D tools are super relevant, but they're complex and very time consuming. So we say that to, I don't know, budget owner, that first of all, your team becomes much more diverse. You can engage creatives without 3D skills. You can engage QA from the beginning. You can engage your customers and clients and all together. So it's super agile, because you give something to test in hours and not in weeks. And then you control all the risks as product owner. You do not just rely on developers. Right. And we see that both from industrial design and from XR development. So in automobile vertical, in gaming industry, and in high-tech companies. So that's the use case.
Great. Does anyone want to build on that? Anyone else with any kind of data points, or kind of just if it's just a customer story where you've really seen success?
Yeah, sure. So I can definitely agree. That's exactly the development we also see with our clients during the current, let's call it challenging times. Our clients tend to explore VR as a way to have a digital showroom to enable their customers to kind of like taste a product or test it or sit in it or see it at least. And this helps a lot. And all that development is currently happening regarding technology and also software is definitely something we're looking forward to, as this will enable us to improve that experience a customer will have, definitely. So digital showrooms is a big thing right now.
Yeah, got it. And before we move on from this topic, I just want to quickly pause on you, Robert, and just ask about the virtual production use case. I know that's something we've seen. Recently we launched the VIVE tracker and the facial tracker, which is, I think virtual production has been a new growing area for us. But like, maybe you can explain for the audience, like, how are you seeing your customers move into that space, and how are they using VR and technologies around it as part of that?
So sure. We currently work with a client in the Middle East that is developing a whole area and exploring the idea of building an entertainment mega park. And for that, they will need virtual production to be able to create and also do marketing with all the architecture they're building, with all the sites you're going to visit there. And this needs to be produced beforehand, before any person is going to step into that deserted place and is starting to building something. And that's also the reason for us to explore the idea to combine virtual production and VR, as those two will, at least that's what I believe, go hand in hand. You have the crowd there that's going to see the content that was created within the virtual production studio, but you will also have people that would like to experience that place from home or from their workplace.
Yeah.
And it will also help us during development. So before the end customer will see anything, as it will speed up iterations during production, during planning.
Got it. Cool. Excellent. Well, we just have a few minutes left here, and I want to just spend a bit of time peeking into the future. Maybe, each of you in turn could just, let's imagine 2 years down the line, 5G's come on stream, maybe we're onto the next gen headsets. Like, what's your vision for what design and visualization with immersive technology looks like in 2 years' time? Pierre, maybe you can kick us off.
Most of our interaction could be and should be done in immersive world to be even more intuitive. So I think the growth of the time, like what Inga was mentioning, like for a car designer, back in the day, there was no VR headset. Then there were VR headset, but for 10 minutes every day. And then it was 20 minutes every 2 hours. And then, especially with collaborative work, then it's become more and more 1 hour, 2 hour, and you don't think anymore like it as something being optional. It's becoming your day-to-day interface to work with. And I think that we are just at the beginning of it with all the technology arriving.
Yeah, definitely. Jonathan, yeah, same question to you. Where do you see Masterpiece in 2 years, and where do you see this space in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the space in general, the first early adopters are jumping in and they're being blown away. The software is getting good enough, the hardware is getting good enough. And over the next 2 years, as all of those things just accelerate, we're going to see that starting to spread through the organization. I think it's going to be kind of one of these things where there's still going to be a bunch of people doing it the old way in some ways, but they'll be like the designers that are drawing by hand instead of using an Adobe product, for example. I mean, there's going to be some that are going to lag, but they're going to be at a significant disadvantage. And I think that it's going to start seeing that if you want to be innovative, if you want to be competitive, if you want to be at the top of your game, it's a no-brainer. You have no other choice at that point to start adopting VR and improving your productivity.
Yeah, that's great. That reminds me, we went through a house reconstruction last year, and when the architect came round, he was, I got the VR headset out, and it was like, oh great, look at this. Maybe we could bring some of those drawings into here. And he was like, no, I use pen and pencil. So I respect him for the craft, but I think a lot of customers will come along and say, hey, we want to use VR, so can you be ready for that? So that's an interesting insight, Jonathan. Inga, yeah, what's your vision for the next couple of years for Tvori and the scene in general?
So I would put two major things to mention. So first of all the designers we talked to that already use VR for design and ideation, they say, our career has grown. I mean, we've become more successful because our managers can much better understand our ideas, and they usually pick our idea because this is the most comprehensive. In the very limited amount of time, we can bring to our managers and customers the entire story or interactive prototype, something that is not possible for us. So we've become more successful and our career has accelerated. And that should be probably the consideration for all the crowd of designers out there, that VR can take you to the next level. You can go from 2D to 3D, from static designer to interaction design, and pursue different career paths. So this is one way that I truly believe it's all about your future. It's about your sustainable future as professional. And the second thing is that one of our customers, I remember our last meeting just before the pandemic in Los Angeles, and they were building the future of retail. And they had to produce a new prototype, a new app every week. So every Friday they invited, 15 random people to have the user tests of their future app, like the future of retail, to do shopping in VR. Those were real people coming to the office. There was so much stress and so much disruption. And what I truly believe in, and the vision behind Tvori, probably in 2 years, is that all user tests for VR products and AR should happen in VR. So I believe that Tvori become the platform when you can run, and any company that is building something for VR can do all user tests for their products in VR on standalone headsets. So that's the vision, and we don't have any physical user tests anymore, regardless if you're building for XR or this is the real new washing machine that you want to check the new button if users get how to use it. So VR allows you to fully reproduce the real world. And this is the huge power. So just join it. It's a high-speed train.
Good stuff. Thanks, Inga. And Robert, round us off. Same question for you.
Yeah, using technology to do something like we talked about before should always be a means to an end, but never perceive it as an obstacle. Sorry. So wearing comfort and visual quality are for sure the most important features for us right now, as we wish to fulfill and exceed our clients' expectations. With the upcoming products that we talked about today, such as the Pro 2, we hope that we can achieve just that. We see more and more industries to explore VR to accelerate their productivity and also new ways to interact with their customers for user tests, for example. I expect that also to increase during the next couple of years.
Yeah, awesome, brilliant, excellent. A great way to end the panel there. Maybe if we could just have a very quick down the list, where can people find out more about you and your products? Pierre, I guess Google, Adobe, but where would you point people to in particular?
So you have substance3d.com also, that is complementary to adobe.com. And then, just for instance, yesterday we did a great webinar on consumer package goods being done in 3D. So just think widely about every industry adopting it. And other than that, our GDC Game Developer Conference showreel on YouTube is pretty cool too.
Awesome, good stuff. Jonathan, if people want to learn about Masterpiece Studio and the new releases you've got?
You can find all about that at masterpiecestudio.com. And what I want to do is not just push my product here. I want you guys to all try everyone else's on the panels here. So these are great apps. Try them, try all the VR apps. And then when you do great work in these apps, pop it into ours afterwards. And you can do the mesh cleanup. You can and do these additional works to put it in the game. So we're really looking to work together with everybody and make this really productive.
Awesome, good stuff. Inga?
I would say that even if you are not immediately set up to try our products in VR, you can start educating yourself. In Tvori, we are organizing and trying to get brilliant speakers who are sharing their journey from flat screen to building in VR, and we are running amazing webinars with people who are working on XR and industrial design from companies like Deutsche Telekom or Genesis, many other companies. We invite those speakers who are sharing their perspective. So you can find more at Tvorium on Twitter or LinkedIn or tvori.com on our website, and also become the beta tester of our collaborative app for standalone headsets and Focus 3. So stay tuned and and start from like grabbing knowledge and experimenting.
Great,
Thank
perfect. And Robert?
Yeah, reach out on social media or take a look on our website. We have all things we're currently working on showcased there. Take a look, get in touch. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for those in the audience for tuning in and listening to our vision for the future of design and visualization. I think this is an area that is very important to VIVE. When we've designed the new headsets, the Focus 3 and Pro 2, we went out and spoke to a lot of these people, a lot of end customers, to really figure out what they need and how we can push the whole industry forward. But obviously, it's hardware is really second place to the great people building software and solutions in this space. So just big thank you to Adobe, Masterpiece, Tvori, and Effectatage for coming. You can find out more information on our OSV partner website as well, and some links there. And if you're visiting us in the EventX platform, then some of these guys will also have virtual booths. So go and check those out after you've watched this. But thanks again, and we'll speak again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye.